And welcome everyone to Sports Talk Line, where we talk sports 24/7, 365. And on today's episodes of Battle for the Big East, we'll be talking to Conor Gereg and talking about pro prospects in the Big East. How are you doing today, Conor?
Doing well, Tom. Thanks for having me on.
Yes. So I did check out one of your articles that you already wrote, and one of them primarily focused on Big East pro prospects. Last year, James Bouknight from UConn was leading the charge. He ended up being a high first-round draft pick, even though he had injuries last season. Coming into this season for the Big East, who do you think are the 2 to 3 best pro prospects that'll be suiting up in the Big East this season?
Yeah, I think immediately the eyeballs go to St. John's Julian Champagnie. No real question there, and kind of a surprise that he came back. I know St. John's fans are in love with the idea of him being here for a junior year. His twin brother from Pitt went to the NBA ranks. But aside from Champagnie, there's a couple of different players that I think really might get maybe some late first and second round attention. I think that Georgetown's McDonald's All-American, Aminu Mohammed, he's a big physical 6'5" guard. There are some question marks about just whether or not he can carry that entire offense. They, of course, lose some major pieces. But I would look there, certainly at the guard spot. On the inside, I wouldn't be surprised to see a player like UConn's Adama Sanogo sneak into the back end of the first. I know that the modern NBA game isn't really kind to kind of the old school bigs, but I don't think you have to look any further than a guy like Clint Capella for maybe a comp for Sanogo.
Yeah, I think Sanogo, he's very big and very athletic, and you hit a point. There are certain guys that would have been locks. Like I look at Illinois' Kofi Coburn. He's probably the closest thing to Shaquille O'Neal. And even when you look in the Big East, you have Nate Watson, who, much to the chagrin of all the Big East players, is coming back for a 5th year. Bruisers like that usually don't stick around that long.
No, they don't. And there's a couple other guys that I think if we were to rewind the clock even a decade ago, I would get some serious attention. A couple of guys from Xavier, Zach Fremantle, who he called Dan Hurley called Fremantle a quote butt kicker, just because he's such a bruiser on the inside, and he actually is beginning to step out a little bit and shoot from distance. So if Fremantle can kind of take that next big step in his junior year, not only is that going to be really beneficial for Xavier, but I think that would put him maybe on that second round fringe. And his teammate, Colby Jones, a rising sophomore, former top 100 kid, he can do just about everything on the court. So this will be a really big year for the guys up in Cincinnati.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. Xavier was one of those teams. We'll see how COVID impacted them, to say the least. Yeah. They really couldn't fully recover from that COVID pause. But one player that's interesting, it seems like Patrick Ewing had a very good recruiting class. He got Jordan Riley. He got Ryan Mutombo, Dikembe Mutombo's son. Okay. And they thought Ryan Mutombo would be the jewel in that class, but then Aminu Mohammed declares and goes to Georgetown. Can you describe Aminu Mohammed to us? You mentioned him a little bit, but can you describe his game more to all of us?
Yeah, he's ready-made. I think fans will notice just what a strong rebounder he is. He's able to kind of attack the lane and finish like a junior senior. He's really developed. And I think just physically, he is ready for kind of that next phase, that professional phase. So if Patrick Ewing can keep him in DC for more than a year, that's a real boon for that program. But I wouldn't overlook a player like Jordan Riley. I know he's right on that kind of top 150 recruit fringe. But this is a kid who had offers from Florida State, from Kansas. So he's a real player. He's not quite physically as able as Muhammad, but I wouldn't be shocked if 2-3 years down the line, he's a real impact player. You mentioned Mutombo, and it's going to be hard to replace Wahab, but Mutombo can do just so much on the inside. And it's more than just shot blocking like his father. He's got really great hands. and he'll finish. He'll absorb quite a few minutes on the inside for Ewing.
Yeah, I would say one of the things looking at going back to, I guess, a new traditional power with the UConn Huskies coming back to the Big East, and I think it benefits both the Big East and UConn. Dan Hurley was able to secure a lot more recruits that way. I think the Big East is more attractive than the American Athletic Conference. But some of the names on UConn, they might have a unique problem, especially when it comes to future draft prospects, because they got Adama Sanogo. They have a few other people out there. They have a Cook. We'll see, is a 7-footer who's been hurt a lot. They have Andre Jackson. I believe RJ Cole you have as some of the draft prospects. So how do you see that meshing? And do you see maybe one person? It seems like Sanogo is the one a lot of people is picking. He has the size. He has athleticism. He might be a little raw, which is still scary. Will be the breakout player. But do you see one where the development of one player stock will hurt another, or can they all mesh together and do a Kentucky and all declare for the draft to be first-round picks?
Yeah, Tom, it is I guess a good problem to have, but Hurley really does have 13 guys that expect to see major minutes. And you want to add to that Corey Floyd, who actually just reclassified and joined Dan Hurley's group last week. And we're into the September 1st right now. So yeah, it's remarkable just how many able bodies he has. And before a Cook got hurt and tore his Achilles during that Memphis game 2 years ago, he was on the fast track to being a draft pick himself. And it's an 18-month recovery. We've seen players like Kobe Bryant and Rudy Gay do it. And the science has come a long way, and there's no reason why a Cook can't return back to what we saw previously. And what is he? He's a rim runner. He can step out and shoot threes. He's a shot blocker, 7-foot wingspan. He is really the prototypical kind of stretch four. So if you can pair a healthy Cook with the reigning defensive player of the year, Isaiah Whaley, there's a lot there for UConn. And to answer your question on how to kind of keep everyone happy, that's a great question. I'm not sure if maybe Samson Johnson takes a back seat to start. He's the heralded top 50 recruit coming in. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's a guy like Richie Springs who waits another year before he sees the floor. There's a lot there. So we'll see how they make sense of it.
Yeah, I don't know if you heard it, but the St. John's fan base was screaming that Whaley was co-defensive player of the year.
Of course, Posh Alexander.
Alexander, who I think when you see Posh Alexander play, you got to wonder, does he start guarding the opposition point guard in warmups? Does he guard him when he comes off the bus? Does he guard him the night before?
Yeah, he's fun to watch.
Yeah, but speaking of which, too, speaking of newcomers, there's also an intriguing transfer coming in. Seton Hall, they're having an interesting offseason with some players coming in, some players coming out, some alumni suing the school. But one of the players that came into Seton Hall was Kadari Richmond, who was a top prospect, went to Syracuse. He left Syracuse and, he joined up with Seton Hall. And I think he's an intriguing name. What can you tell us about Kadari Richmond?
Yeah, we saw him really just eat up opposing offenses sitting at the top of that Boeheim zone at Syracuse last year. And in fact, he was one of the NCAA leaders in steal percentage. So a combination of just quick hands, wingspan, and just kind of a tenacious nose for the ball. Kadari Richmond is going to really get quite a bit of attention. And it wouldn't really be a surprise to see him take that Seton Hall point guard job day one. I know there's quite a bit of competition there, especially with Bryce Aiken coming back for that 5th year. But I just kind of surveying draft boards across the web, and Kadari Richmond has appeared on several. So there's a lot to like. Big, long guard. If he can really kind of harness that shooting stroke, again, you might see another Big East guy kind of sneak into that first round.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the last time outside Villanova where multiple Big East players were drafted in the first round. I got to throw it though too. I feel like with Villanova, they don't get the top prospects, but they develop every player into a pro prospect.
They have, and don't be surprised to see kind of Trey Patterson fall into that mold, and if they can get Crosby Roundtree healthy, there's just so many guys that have kind of worked their way through that system, like you said.
Yeah, I think too, since we're going to stick with Villanova, one of the more interesting figures about it is Colin Gillespie. So he was someone who was player of the year, and he blew out his knee towards the end. Villanova still made it to the Sweet 16. And Colin Gillespie, he took advantage of that extra year. He's coming back. I almost wonder, would he have been better off if he didn't get – because the interesting thing is when you see all these players, you're like, do I want them to be good enough where they go for the draft but don't beat my team? You got to find that out. So Gillespie's coming back, but how do you see Colin Gillespie's draft stock going?
Yeah, I know Villanova fans couldn't possibly live with it, but to see him finish his career with an injury like he did, that just would have kind of been an ill-fitting way to finish an incredible career. I don't know that his game really translates really well to the professional level. It's been a while since we've seen Mark Jackson, in the post as a point guard, and that's what Gillespie does. He backs down opposing guards, and he's fortunate to have really good shooters around him like Jermaine Samuels. I think he's really the perfect college point guard. There's a reason why Villanova is kind of a preseason Final Four pick for a lot of people, and Gillespie's kind of the major engine there. Around him, though, there's a ton of talent as well, and I know that they did lose kind of a pro piece at power forward with I'm blanking on his name.
Is it Robinson Earls?
Yeah, there you go. Robinson Earl. Yeah. Kind of going in the second round, but there's plenty there around Gillespie, and surprise, Jay Wright has another top 5 team.
Yeah. It's one of the things too. It seems like Villanova, they get the right guys, and they're big. They don't have the traditional big man, which when they've gotten beat in the NCAA tournament, that's what they've lacked. But you got to give them credit. They put up a good fight against Baylor, more of a fight than Gonzaga did.
They certainly did, yeah.
But usually Villanova's issue in the tournament is, they dominate the Big East, usually get the number 1 seed. They get into that field of 32 and they just get beat up inside and they can't hit a 3-point to save their life. When they get those big physical guys, they become a different team. The one year they had a strong front court size-wise with Omari Spellman, they pretty much single-handedly ran through the NCAA tournament in 2018. So I just think, though, too, one of the things with Villanova is their style, their big man converts to the NBA big man very well, whether it's Sadiq Bey, because they get the 6'9", 6'10" guys that are perimeter with perimeter skills. But, things change, but I don't know who's going to take down Villanova. They're going to be up there for a while.
And kind of another example for that, Tom, is kind of look at what's happened with Eric Pascal. Here we have a guy who, after 1 year at Fordham, and then kind of under Jay Wright's wing, becomes an NBA mainstay. We see him kind of play everywhere from the 2 guard to the power forward. So you're totally right. Kind of that system is so adaptive and translates beautifully to the NBA.
Yeah. Speaking of great systems, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button so you can follow all the Sports Talk Line stuff like Battle for the Big East and our basketball highlights and football stuff coming up. But I guess, before you go, Connor, the last question I got is, who do you see as the big breakout prospects? So you kind of mentioned already Julian Champagnie. We talked about Kadari Richmond, Adama Sanogo. Who do you see who like people aren't talking about now, who you think is going to raise their level, going to raise their stock this upcoming season in the Big East?
Sure. I know we mentioned the Georgetown recruits, but there's another recruit, Tyler Beard, little guard who can kind of come off the bench. At least he will this year. And I really see him as kind of a multifaceted guard who isn't just a distributor, but he's going to score as well. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe he's kind of in the front of the minds of a lot of Big East fans come February and March. Going across the league, I think it's a great breakout season for a player like Andre Jackson. from UConn. Jackson kind of had a few obstacles last year. He had a wrist injury right at the start, multiple COVID pauses. He's not James Bouknight. He's a very, very different player, but he is so disruptive with his athleticism, speed, and just with Dan Hurley's pressing style and kind of physicality. It's easy to see why Andre Jackson could really be a force. Again, there's a major competition for minutes at UConn. I'd love to see what the inside of those practices look like, but Jackson is a player and a major breakout candidate.
All right, before we go, Conor, can you tell everyone where they can find you on social media?
Sure, absolutely. So my Twitter handle is at CT Gereg, Gereg. All of my work is published at NCAA Hoops Digest. And like Tom had mentioned, we've done a couple of Big East centric articles, including looking at some of the prospects from this upcoming 2022 season and the NBA draft.
All right. Thanks for coming on, Conor. And remember, everyone, to listen like you play with intensity.